Hello guys, welcome to another podcast, trusting you're all well. Something I've been thinking about over the last couple of days is the philosophy around matching our outer voice with our inner voice. And what does this mean and how do we do it? For me, I feel like the matching in our outer voice in as far as what we're saying, what we're expressing, both vocally and in our actions, matches how we feel inside or what we're thinking inside as well in our own internal thoughts. And when we can match that up, that is authenticity. That is being our authentic selves. I don't know if it's worthwhile or needed to do it 100% of the time, but that's probably a topic for another podcast. But certainly when it comes to relating to others, especially relating to others, also what we want to see in the world, what we want to do as individuals, expressing that outwardly, when it's matched with our inner wisdom in our inner world, then that's where a lot of magic can happen, really. That's a flow state space. And yeah, it's something that while it's easy to consider, easy to think about, it's also easier said than done. And I know for myself, it's a constant process of mindfulness around it, of what am I thinking about, how do I feel about this certain situation, both on a micro and a macro scale, and am I expressing that correctly? Are my words mirroring what I feel inside, or on the flip side, are my words not acknowledging what I'm feeling? Are they different to my internal discourse? And if there's a dissonance there between my outer world and my inner world, then that dissonance can go on to create disharmony, which gets us out of the flow state. So what are some ways we can go about matching our outer world, our outer voice with our inner voice? I guess, the main thing is what I just touched on earlier on that mindfulness aspect. So taking responsibility of our thoughts, of our actions, not placing blame on to others, that it's okay for me to think one way but act another, or to say another thing. And that's where, the mindfulness, the accountability of our beliefs is really important. And I'm in no way saying at all that I'm an expert at doing this. In fact, if you ask Leah, she'll say, I've got a long way to go. But it's something I do give a lot of thought to and understand the importance of. And I know that there are times in my life where I have spent time, or a good portion of time, doing that and matching my outer voice with my inner voice, that there's an ease that comes into life, and things really do start to move along nicely. So, mindfulness. How do I feel? Like, what's my internal dialogue? Am I feeling good about this certain situation? Am I feeling good about what I want? Whether it could be a job or a task that's at hand, or you play sport or fitness, your health, obviously relationships again. And then if we can express that and talk about it in a manner that's not based on emotion or blame, but based on internal rationale, then it allows our message to get across, and it allows us to communicate our message in a much more effective manner. That's what I try and do with these podcasts, for example. Like, it's easier when it's like this, or when I'm interviewing someone, to drop into that space where what I discuss on these podcasts and what I discuss when I do interviews on these podcasts, it really is I really am matching my outer words and matching my inner words. They really do. But I find that hard to do in just normal everyday life. There's fear there, I guess. I guess fear would be an aspect of that. Fear of what the other person may say. When it's in a podcast, there tends to be an agreeable level there that you can say something and it won't get too harshly judged, if it is in fact judged or critiqued or criticised, or it may be agreed upon. But in life, it doesn't really work that way. Sometimes we can come across people, and especially our own selves, that are quite critical, quite harsh in their judgments and their criticisms. And yeah, I mean, I can be like that myself. So it can be easier if we're just on our own, or if we're doing like a Facebook feed or a YouTube podcast or an Instagram story or whatever it may be. It's a lot easier than doing it in real life. Having said that, there are people that struggle to even do that on social media, to have their outer voice match their inner voice, and that loss of authenticity can really come through. And I've actually been thinking a lot about this lately, and I feel like it's a massive issue. Like, I really do, especially around people who are trying to sell other people's services to better their lives, or to better their circumstances. And I'm sure you've seen this too, and I've come to see and find that a lot of the people that are doing that, while there's some absolutely lovely, genuine, authentic people doing that, a lot aren't. And their life could be a mess, yet what they're saying is totally against that. And that dissonance, which brings in it that within it that inauthenticity, is used to prey upon people, and especially those who are most vulnerable. They'll, if you're in a vulnerable position, and I've been like this, in the past, where I've needed something, or I've felt a lack in something, and then someone's come along, whether it's in real life or over the social medias or whatever it may be, some sort of teacher / guru / human being person. I've sort of like latched on, I've like not latched on, been drawn to it, like been drawn into their message, and and what has happened certainly is that you find out that they're quite inauthentic. And it wasn't until I started really getting into that mode of practicing it myself and being really authentic with myself that I was able to see through the bullshit. I was like, when someone came along like that, I was able to see what was really going on behind their words. Like, what are you, like, someone would be saying something or doing something, and I got to the point where I could finally get them. And the reason I could is because I was authentic with myself. And I'd seen people be very good at that around me for years and years, and I just couldn't quite get it. But all I thought was like some magical, mystical thing that was either handed down to you as like a divine gift from God, or something that you had to go to the extremes to learn. And I could see, especially a couple of people in my life who were very good at reading other people and understanding whether they were full of shit or not. And I still wasn't there. I couldn't get there. And then when I realized that it really was just about reflecting that, so having that mirrored. So when we are interacting with people, that they are the mirror to us. And so if we're authentic within ourselves and we're speaking our truth, if we meet someone or come into contact with someone who's not doing that, then we'll pick up on it. It might not be straight away, but it'll be very quickly. But if we're not speaking our truth, if we're not being authentic, then somebody who comes across our path who is also that way, it's very hard to disassociate and see the difference. And so it's very important. Like it's an important tool for us to be able to develop and learn as human beings. And I think it's something we've probably had for a long time, for many, many generations. But certainly I would think in the last few generations since, I don't know, say industrial age and onwards, where we've been contained and a lot of our life has been led for us, and we've had this inability to think for ourselves and to discern for ourselves, that we've lost that ability to be able to discern and to understand, because we haven't had to look at ourselves as much. We haven't had time to go within, to understand ourselves, to be aware of what we're saying, to be aware of what we're thinking. And it's an issue that's that works on a macro level too, on a broader scale, for how we relate as cultures and political parties and nation states. How this inability to understand ourselves and to speak our truth of who we are means that we're not able to fully understand another person's motives or another culture's motives. And that breakdown is what leads to a lot of tensions, a lot of fear, and unfortunately war, as we have in this world. Whereas if we took the onus upon ourselves, I'm speak on a macro scale here, to really just be with ourselves and understand who we are, represent ourselves authentically, then we could match and also raise that vibration for others around us as well. But that really comes down to, and it really starts on an individual level. So if we're able to do that ourselves, to move through this world with our authenticity, people can see that we're speaking our truth. That shows that it can be done for others. Like people have done that for me, who have been able to do that I've been able to pick up and say, oh yeah, actually you can do that. And you can do it in a way that's empowering and powerful, and in no way a weakness, which we've got this silly sort of understanding of what it means to be authentic, that if you're authentic that you might be giving away something, or there's a weakness involved there. It's a ridiculous bullshit thing that we've really got to overcome. And so if we can do that individually, it helps those around us. It helps the community around us, whichever community we might be in. And we can then really form and build tribes and create something, and create societies, cultures, tribes that are living in their truth and living with an authenticity that allows for said flow state and the abundance that comes from that as well. So I think a lot of what is, as we're doing that, there's many people that are doing this now. There's many more people that are rising up and letting go from all the bullshit, speaking their truth, speaking from a position of authenticity. And we're seeing how our leaders, our political, social leaders, aren't doing that. And the lying and the manipulation and the corruption that we've all sort of known about, especially over the last, say, 4 or 5 decades, it's getting to a point where it's just becoming blatant now, where we've had enough, and we require either new systems in place or people who are genuinely authentic and speaking their truth to occupy those positions. But when it's a game rigged based on lying and manipulation, politics, then it's very hard to do. So the same thing goes in our in corporatocracy as well. In the business sector, it's all about sort of one-upmanship and getting over the next man or woman, lying, cheating. The finance sector is based on that as well. So the major drivers in our world that oversee a lot of our laws and our our governance, our institutions, and how they all operate is based on a philosophy of lying and cheating. And it's no wonder we're seeing aspects of the world that are absolutely in the pits, because how could it be any other way? So I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, do we need a new system altogether, or does it just require good people to come through and do something? But that's a problem. I mean, who's good in the world who wants to step up and become the president of the United States? Like, who would want that job? Who would want to be the Prime Minister of Australia or the Prime Minister of Britain? Or I feel it does need a new system, really, when I think about it, because it's an archaic system, really. I'm talking about our political system and the way we're represented in the world, that we need to have a representative who votes based on their ideology for a group of people. I mean, that was necessary 100, 200, 300 years ago, where transport wasn't a thing, where we weren't connected globally, technologically, and we did need someone to vote on our behalf. Like, it was important back then, but we don't need it now. Like, there's no reason why we need that system of government anymore, where we have a representative. There's no reason why we as individuals can't vote on topics for ourselves, negating the blatant corruption that comes from our politicians, who are buoyed by firstly their party preferences, not even their own individual wants or needs, and by lobbyists who are very powerful with the dollar and can manipulate politicians to getting what they want. And we know that goes on now. We've seen it. We've been aware of it for the last decade. That we need to move away from that. And can it work with good people getting in there and not being susceptible to it? I don't know. I mean, good people can turn as well. Like, good people can change. So I feel like we need a new system. We can keep perhaps vestiges of it, but I know there are new systems that are looking at coming across politically, using technology, like blockchain technology especially, to help keep secrecy there. But Flux is one example. A good friend of mine and previous podcast guest, Dahi, is involved with the Flux movement. So that's based on what I just spoke to, as far as a piece of legislature comes through. People can vote for it on their app, on their phone or computer, wherever it may be, whether they agree with this bill or not. If they don't know much about the subject, they can pass on their vote to someone else who does, and then they can vote on another bill that they might know of more intimately, that someone else doesn't. So it's a sharing network there as well, where we can really vote as a community and have it as an individual thing, bypassing the middleman and getting around that. So what the say of the people is what is then effective, because we all know now that's not what goes on. I mean, you think about the amount of our tax dollars that get spent on military and defense. They call it defense, but really, it's not a defense force anymore. You know, if we live in these allied countries, Australia, Britain, US, Canada, New Zealand, etc., they've gone from defense forces to offense forces. So a lot of our hard-earned income is being taxed to pay for missiles and bullets to kill people on the other side of the world. A lot of them innocent as well. And it's bullshit. Like, why that has to continue, I do not know. But it is continuing. I don't understand why, but I know why it is, because those in power are just clinging on like fucking tight, like by their fingernails. I'm sure they can see the end coming. I mean, they've seen what the internet has done. They've seen what the ability for global communities to be able to come together, to share information, to gather information that was once secret, to be able to then whistleblow and talk about these things and understand the corruption and the misuse of power in those political ranks. But again, they still have the power. It needs changing, and it's not going to come through something I spoke to in my last podcast. We need to start with ourselves first, like clean our own bedroom before we start trying to clean up the outside world. So I say clean up our own bedroom, both literally and metaphorically, but making sure that on a metaphorical understanding of it, making sure that we're good inside, that we're clear, and it's not that we're always going to be perfect or in and out of these sort of states, but that we've got a good understanding of ourselves. We're not putting blame upon others. We're not using others as a deterrent for what we want to see in the world, that we're taking personal responsibility. And then that way we can enact and affect change into the power structures as well. It will come through necessity that it will have to happen. The idea of a violent revolution, we know and we have seen, if we learn anything from history, just does not work. Think about Russia, China, Cuba, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, all these countries where these violent revolutions have taken place to overthrow a tyranny, a dictator, what have you. They just end up the same. It ends up being the same thing because they're operating within the same framework that everyone has become accustomed to. And power corrupts when you get into that space. So we need to decentralize. We need to bring it back to a community level. And that's what platforms like the Flux political party offer, is the ability to decentralize and to bring it back to the individual, where it's not just centralized on a political party or an MP or a senator or whatever your representative may be called wherever you're from in the world, but it's we are our own representatives as individuals, and then therefore as a community, whether that's in a nation state or a global community as well. So yeah, matching our outer voice with our inner voice, it all starts from there. And it's not an easy thing to do. And it can be one of those ones where we slip in and out of doing it. But I feel like that mindfulness and the ability to pull ourselves up on it when we're not speaking our truth, when we're not being authentic, is a really important thing. But, beware of and what I've really come to see too, of that whole personality, that whole cult of personality thing where we follow that one individual that we think we hold up as being like the almighty and that they have all the answers and that's who we want to be. We might be able to learn lessons from them, but it's important that we stay very objective to it. To think that they have all the answers is totally wrong. They may have some good points, etc. I'm talking about people like even like Muji or Osho or Ram Dass, all these sort of guys, and especially these quote internet gurus who preach this type of stuff as well. We see some of the things that they might post and it's like, yeah, they must be onto it. But then, I know, speaking from experience, that then you meet these people, you talk to these people, and it's just your life in no way leads. It's too easy to have a second life on social media. That's what I'm trying to say. Much more easy than it is now. People who espouse the virtues of authenticity and keeping it real, and then going and buying tens of thousands of fake Russian bot Instagram followers just so that their message looks more powerful than another person's or more valid than another person's is gross. It's quite sickening, actually. And going back to it, I think it's one of the issues that we face in this world at the moment is the the empowerment and the complete ability to be inauthentic, but still pull in a tremendous amount of followers. It's something that I think, again, we just need more and more people to be authentic and to overcome that. And perhaps it's just a balancing that we have at the moment where it's too easy to be inauthentic. And I hope, though, that as technology progresses and we move along, and this understanding of it's going to be very hard to keep secrets from people. There's some philosophy out there that, there won't be such thing as secrets in the future. We're not going to be able to keep secrets from each other because technology would be at such a space that its ability to collect data and to transfer data and to communicate data is going to be so exponentially huge that it's very hard to keep anything a secret. And it'd be great on a business level, obviously, on a political level and finance level, but also on an individual level. I think, it'll be interesting for sure. Like the reality that we're entering in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be quite unique. And I feel like it's those who are out there who are matching their outer voice with their inner voice, coming at it from a space of truth, from their heart, and being authentic, are really going to be the ones who are going to help move this thing forward, and that people are going to look up to and want to be a part of, to collect around, and to form something that that whilst it's global, is decentralized and local as well. So I hope that's you, if you're listening, that you're doing this and are working on doing this, because we need more people like it. And I think, there's no denying that now. Like, we really do need people to really step up, speak their truth, be authentic with the way they present themselves, not putting on falsehoods for people just to claim attention. Bring it on. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll return next week for another podcast. I've been enjoying doing these individual ones, and I have some interviews lined up very soon, including with someone very close and special to me, hopefully in the next 3 or 4 days. Until then, hope you're all enjoying life, and I'll see you next time. Bye.